I am Naveen Bhat. I'm the CEO and co-founder of a company called 25 Years More. We are focused on providing solutions for the next generation or Life 2.0 generation. And as part of our company's activities, we run a webinar series. We've been running it now for almost 19 months, 20 months. And I'll talk about the topics that we cover. And in terms of our company vision, uh, I think everybody recognizes that the global population, especially in the developed world, is aging. It's a gray tsunami that's coming in. And what we are talking about is the fact that we want to create a global community of smart agers. We don't want to have just people getting into Life 2.0 without a purpose. So thriving in Life 2.0, leading a life with purpose in various elements is what we're looking at. And the different elements, we broadly group them into learn, earn, give, and grow. So the learn is for people who are, have this continual curiosity to learn something new. I was just playing for Niharika, my flute. That's my learn for the last few days. Um, Earn is for people who still want to get back into some form of earning, whether it's through director level positions, whether it's through startups, etc. Grow is for people who want to evolve, and give is for creating some sort of a legacy by giving back to society, not just money, but to give back to society. While we were doing the webinars, some of you may have seen this slide already. We asked about what are the types of topics we should cover. Adventure, wellness, finance, and others came up in the top 4 or 5. Spirituality is in the others section. And in each webinar, what we want to do is talk about the webinar topic itself, have the speaker or the partner, cover the main topic, but then we finish with a call to action, which says, hey, listen, now that you heard something about this topic, what would you like to do? And that's the same format we will have for this call as well. And if you look at the various topics that we've covered here, you'll see, we've got several topics on finance, several on learning new skills. On the give section, we've not had enough. We have several on the grow yourself. And this seminar is by Tirthankar Dash. I'll introduce him to you in a minute. So we're having 2 seminars on spirituality. So July 2026 and August 2026, next month, will also be on spirituality. Okay. When you introduce a topic like spirituality, you're not very sure whether people will respond positively or not. And this is the maximum attendance registrations we've had. In typical webinars, you have maybe a 30-40% fall off. But since this is a curated group of members from 25 Years More, we have a very small fall off. And I expect about 50 people. There are 2 sessions, one in the morning and one in the evening, Singapore time, that is to cater to the global groups. And here's some of the questions that were asked in the section in the registration form. One was, have you had a deep conversation with yourself about spirituality? Interestingly, about 35 people said yes. Is spirituality a subject that is tied to religion? This comes up very commonly because sometimes spiritual discussions lean towards religion and sometimes not. And just wanted to get a feel. So it's good that most people think that it's not. And lastly, would you be interested in a spirituality retreat in the future? And surprisingly, 31 people said yes. So in our call to action, we will be talking about that as well. In our conversation for today, we will have Tirthankar Dash. He is not only a good friend of ours, he's a coach on the platform. He has helped us shape the company in many conversations. He's a philosopher. He's a spiritual guide to many people. He's had I guess, students or folks that he's coached all over the world. And he's an extremely good whiskey drinker as well. So his concepts of spirituality come in various forms, levels of alcohol. So Dash, without taking any more of your time, let me pass over to you to walk us through a dialogue on self-awareness.
Thanks very much. Thank you, Naveen, for the invitation. I'm going to quickly share my screen so that just let me know when you're able to see my screen and hear me clearly. Is that a yes to both?
Yes to
Okay,
both.
lovely.
And I'll
Thank you.
have a chat session open on the side. So as people, converse and talk, please, feel
Yeah,
free and I will pick up the good points for
because
Dash to talk about.
that'll be great. Thank you, Naveen. Because I don't have access to the chat, I'm just staring at the screen and some of you. So it'll be great if Naveen you could help me. But when Naveen said talk about spirituality, I'm like, I don't know. I mean, where does it start and where does it end? I mean, it's like one of the most I think let me start with the most difficult one, because then after that everything else becomes easy. The most difficult one is this question, this most profound question of who am I? I asked this question to myself about 22 years back, and I can't say that I've got the answers, but the question has evolved into layers and layers and has helped me travel down a road which I think has been the biggest gift of my life. So, uh, a, a quick disclaimer, I don't have answer to this question. I'm a co-traveler on this journey. And what I will share with you is some learnings from my own journey and journeys of people that I have learned from, who have tried to answer. We are all seekers in this journey. If someone says they know the answer to this question, perhaps they don't know the answer themselves. So we will delve on this question called Who Am I? I don't know how many of you have ever asked this question to yourself in your life. Could you just kind of like say yes, no, thumbs up, yeah? I'm assuming a few would have asked this question. And I mean, it's sometimes it's like it's not a question of trust. It's a design question. Whenever you ask that question, think of it as I have asked this question to because it's a question that leads you from disorder to order. Oh, there you are. There are a few people raising hands, so it's great that at least I'm amongst a few seekers asking that question. And now, Oxford University in 2018, the philosophy department actually posted five questions, great unresolved philosophical questions. Not mine. Oxford University has done this. There are five of them, which are being discussed, debated continuously by philosophers even today. If you go to the Oxford University site, you will see that. What would global justice look like? Who do we really, do we have free will really? Can we know anything at all? What is death? And the last one is, who am I? So you see, it's not me asking this question, you asking this question, but actually it's a question being asked in the most intellectuals of circles or the most philosophical of circles. So you are in good company when you ask this question, because this is an answers to this question leads to something beautiful, a place what I call peace. But we'll talk about that later. The synonym to this question is knowing myself, which is what we're going to talk about. So who am I? The I is the self, right? So the question then is, who is me as I talk to myself? So who's the self in me that I'm looking for is the other way of asking that question. Now, a lot of people jump into this what we call self-help, self-development, self-mastery, self-improvement. But what they don't ask, which they should be asking, is the who is asking that question. The self that is helping needs to be helped. That self that needs development, that self that needs mastery. Now, who is the self? Because seven habits, eight principles, 20 ways, and 30 mantras doesn't apply universally to everybody. It is the who in us that meets that mantra. And each one of us receives a different mantra almost. When I use a mantra, I'm not necessarily referring to religion. My idea of peace or growth or joy is very different from someone else's. So it's very important before we jump into formulas of spirituality, we ask the question preceding that is, who am I that is seeking that in that? I want my suffering to come down. I want to meet God, whoever it is. Who am I that wants to meet God? So, this for me, the primordial first principles question, the self awareness precedes self everything else. So, which is why I want to land with this. This is the most beautiful question you could ask. but treat it as a very simple design question. And today, our goal would be to my goal. This is a subject very large, and I have been spending 22 years almost with this question. So there is no 45-minute answer to this question. Um, it's not even a 45-year-old answer. So 45 years is too small, less for to answer this question. But the journey itself is beautiful. So what the goal of today in the next 35 minutes for me is to open three doors for you through which I want you to travel and experience your own answers. No right, no wrong. These are the three doors in which, through which I would like you to walk into that space of answers. And we'll do this one at a time. I'm going to walk you through the first door, which is called the external self. There is a self that is staring at. Before I jump into the external self, I want to ask you this question. Answer this question for yourself. When I grow up, I want to become ... Think about it carefully. When I grow up, I want to become ... Not a complex one, but there should be an answer. We are all growing, right? When I grow up, I want to become. Your answer is your answer. Does anybody want to share a word or a sentence? I mean, we don't have time for this thing, but when I grow up, I want to become. Anybody?
Oh, you can post it on chat as well.
Sure. So now that's a door opening question, actually. Another question of the same line is, who are the heroes I worship in my life? And that leads us to this thing of the idea of the self that wants to grow. Now, when you see, I want you to remember this one image when you're exploring this question called the iceberg. Now, how much of the iceberg is actually visible to us ourselves? And we are all icebergs. Only 5% of that self that we call self is actually exposed to our conscious selves, conscious mind. And that's the one that we see. And yet we don't even have answers to those questions. And that tip of the iceberg is this one, which is, when I grow up, I want to become what? Do I even know that? People say, I want to earn money, I want to find happiness, all of that. But they don't ask this simple question. I want to grow up to become what? So answering that question will lead you into a very interesting set of outcomes. And yet it is just the tip of the iceberg. This self, which is called the external self, is also the ego self. The ego is seeking its own satiation. The ego wants to find its own ground of status, of power, of a place in this world, which is why this self is an interaction with society. And society says you must become a hero, you must become, and then the child grows up to becoming that. And that self is called the what we would call is the ego self, trying to become someone. Try answering this question. This is a simple one, but wait and stare at each of these questions. Who I see myself to be. Who do I see myself to be? Some image, right? Who I think the world sees me as. What is the perceived image? What do other people perceive of me? What am I thinking of them? Who the world actually sees me as. If I go and actually ask 10 people that know you to say, can you explain who Dash is? And they say, oh, you are that. And who do I want to be seen as? Now, you see, a lot of people, they don't have a confluence of answers to this question. There are diverse sort of directions. So society sees them as a particular way. They see themselves in a particular way. They want to become someone. It leads to a lot of confusion. The most self-aware people, when it comes to the external world, it becomes one thing. All four have the same answer. I see myself as this. The world sees myself as this. I actually want to be seen as this. And so then there is a sense of harmony in that external world. That's the goal of the external self. And there's a whole bunch of literature in that space of saying growth. How does the soul grow? How does the ego manifest itself in ways? How do you master something? This is where you study, learn subjects, fields. And Naveen wants to grow to become a musician, let's say. So he's playing a flute. So I want to grow to become a musician. I want to grow to become an author. I want to write a book. I want to publish something. I want to teach a classroom. There is no good or a bad thing here. Everybody has an urge to become someone, yet we park that aside and then say, oh, let me think about it later. But someone takes an action and says, let's take lesson one of that. And then they start journeying towards that self that wants to become the aspirational self, as we call it. What does it do? It creates achievement orientation, it creates fulfillment, and it creates status acknowledgement. People look up to me and says, oh, you are someone. In the eyes of the others, I stand up, I get respect. But fundamentally, what happens what happens between I become my own hero. When you feed to your ego self, your external self, over a period of time, you become your own hero. Because the gap, why do we worship heroes? Because they signify, basically the gap between me and my heroes is the gap I want to fill. So the most incredible place to be is when you slowly become your own hero. And that's the idea of the external self, or we could call it the aspirational self. That is a one answer to who am I, which is that is the I that is becoming my own hero. Any questions on this one? Again, it's a whole field of study in itself. But there is a simple, I've given a very simple pathway to who are you becoming or want to become, and what are you doing to become that? And what is your place in society beyond survival? Beyond survival, what is it that you would like to achieve? Now, a lot of people have ideas about becoming an artist, becoming a writer, becoming a teacher, becoming an entrepreneur. There's always some aspiration hidden inside you. Just to pay heed to that is unlocking that who am I in the becoming of myself. That's the first one. Door number one. Door number two is the what I call is the internal self. This is the self that is hidden even to ourselves, our rational selves. This is what we would call the unconscious part of us. By the way, eight forget 80 90% of our behavior, 90 to almost close to 9500% of our behavior is actually irrational. Who you got married to, what kind of environment gives you joy, what kind of place do you want to live in, what kind of hobbies did you pick up, what kind of clothes do you want to wear, what kind of books do you want to read. All of those come from what makes you angry, what makes you sad. All of those come from one place called the unconscious. And this is the below the water, the unseen part of the pyramid that is driving those actions. All of those attitudes, values, beliefs, behaviors, drive what we call the self that is hidden. It's called the unconscious, irrational self, and yet unique to each one of us. This is the place which the psychologists or people call the psyche. So when you access this self of yours, you're accessing your unconscious self. But that which is dictating most things in you, someone who has an addiction or an anxiety on the negative side, or someone who feels at peace somewhere, basically it's the psyche talking to it. So the irrational is actually expressing itself. Someone looks at a mountain and says, wow, it's amazing. And someone says, oh, it's just a mountain. The difference is someone looks at nature and says, I love nature. And someone says, oh, it's okay, I like my. So there's things about what visuals, what ideas, including our sexual drives, our preferences for beauty, all of them come from this place called the psyche. Knowing that would be your second self, which is called the internal unconscious self. Now, here's a question for you. If I make you enter a room of joy, your room of joy, let's say there is a room of joy called Dash's room of joy, Naveen's room of joy, Moshumi's room of joy. What do I see there? What do I see there? Think about it for a minute. I enter your room of joy, unique to you. And you will find there are things that bring joy to you. Somewhere in someone's room, I'll find a guitar. I'll find a book. In someone's room, I'll find food. I'll find a lovely place where people are cooking. In someone's room, I will find people and conversations. Now, that's a one trigger to understand what does my joy room look like. So that's a way of accessing that psyche in you. and the unconscious in you, because those symbols direct you towards a place of joy. Similarly, there could also be a place called anxiety. What place makes you anxious? I've worked with people who actually are at peace. I call them wartime heroes, and there are peacetime heroes. There are CEOs that I work with who like, I'm so bored because everything is looking fine. I need to go and fight a war. So, for them, that adventure, for someone who says, no, I don't want to leave my room and go anywhere. I just want to sit here and read a book. For someone who says, are you crazy? You want to sit in a room? There's a whole nature outside. Someone like Naveen would say, get out. Come on, let's go walking. So you see, two different people, two different psyches. Joy for him, different from joy for me, or growth for him. So this is the part, but this is hidden from you. You must understand that. Now, psychology has not given enough respect to it. When you go to, they call it either psychiatry or psychotherapy. Oh, I need to go to a psychiatrist or a psychotherapist because I have a problem. But actually, 90% of psychology is nothing to do with illness or problem. It is about finding your psyche. You don't have to go to a psychiatrist, psychotherapist. You can go to someone and say, listen, I just want to figure out my own story. And that's when you'll discover. Yet, we have classified psychology or psychology with illness, whereas actually the purpose of psychology is and has been to help you figure out your unconscious part so that you can be in harmony with it. So now in that psyche, two characters sit there. Two characters sit. One character is called the archetype, and one character is called the shadow. There are two sides to you. I call it the bright side and the dark side of that psyche. I've first told you about the ego, which is the external side. That's the external self. Now I'm bringing you down to the internal self, which is the below the iceberg. In the iceberg, below the iceberg, hidden to us are two people, two selves. One is called the bright self and the dark side. The bright side is called the archetype, and the dark side is called the repressed shadow. You just have to remember these three words: the ego, the archetype, and the shadow. I'm going to talk to you about, now each one is a field in itself. I'm trying to summarize some things in very quick manner, but they are complete fields in themselves. Now, let's talk about the archetype. Here's a question. What is the nature of sugar? We eat sugar. What is the nature of sugar? Anybody? Answer your question. It's the simplest one. What is the nature of sugar? Is to give sweetness, right? It's sweetness. What's the nature of fire? Heat. What's the nature of salt? Saltiness. What is the nature of you? What is the nature of you? If I today say, have you seen a lion? You will say, yeah. How do you recognize it? But by its nature too. What is a lion's nature? What is a tiger's nature? What is a giraffe's nature? What is a sheep's nature? We are 98.7% animals. We all have natures hidden inside of us that keep showing it, and yet we never look at that nature. We are what we repeatedly do. We are what we repeatedly. There are tendencies. In Hindu Shastras, in the Hindu scriptures, they're called gunas. Gunas are pravritis, or which are called tendencies. I mean, that's all. Again, lots to learn within the Eastern scriptures, or also in the Western script, in psychotherapy or in the West. But in the East, it's been there forever. They say when gurukuls, where students are sent to gurukuls, they were actually, the guru would first understand what their natural nature is. Somebody could then become a warrior, somebody could become a priest depending on their gunas and their prakritis and pravritis, which is tendencies. So we need to know our own tendencies better because they are psychological tendencies. And some tendencies guide us to knowing our true nature. Like my nature could be that more like, I want a teacher. I'm an introvert. I want to talk. I want to read. So that's my true nature. The more I am in my own nature, I am finding myself. There is a definition of the self that we define that. Oh, my true nature is that of a magician. My true nature is that of a healer. Again, there is no money involved in it. There's no, and when your nature meets your work, meets your life, you are in harmony. So please understand, this is not a complex question. It's just that we don't look at who am I, that nature in us. And in the Hindu construct, the Vedic not even the Hindu, in the Vedic context, there is such a thing called Swadharma, which is what is your in Gita, which is a beautiful book. It's even if you ignore the religious part of it, just as a philosophical book, Krishna tells his student Arjuna, says, you would rather commit crimes being in your Swadharma as a warrior than creating virtues in Paradharma, which is someone else's nature. He says, you would much rather play in your playground rather than playing in someone else's playground, because you'll flourish, you'll grow, you'll become a master. Same is applied to in the field of Taoism. What is the Tao? It's called the uncut wood. When you flow, where do you naturally flow towards? That is our true nature. And in the field of psychology, the goal is to find out what is my true nature. And it's not an abstract question. There are methods in which you can find out what is your Swadharma. Carl Jung, a famous psychologist, really, and who I really look up to and worship, was able to marry Eastern and Western concepts. He came up with this construct. Now, this is just one of the constructs. There are many constructs called the archetype. Now, if you look at it, and you can go, there are tons of books to read. Happy to share links. I mean, if you were to connect with me later on all of this, you could be a ruler, an artist, an innocent, a sage, an explorer, an outlaw, magician, lover, jester. They all anchor something natural in you. Now, why is it important that you live in your natural state? Because they call it the uncoiled spring. We usually live like springs that are coiled. When we live in our natural state, the spring is uncoiled. So you're at peace with yourself. So like in the first one, when I said you are becoming that, you become charged up. Here you find peace. You feel less repressed and less stressed when you are playing from your own nature. Now, that's the archetype. I've told you that there are two people within that space. One, which is somebody has a question? Okay. Let's talk about the second guy called the shadow, called the dark side. Now, this is the person which is the most complex one to find out. It's the one that we repress, hide, and lock up in the dungeon somewhere. The shadow is actually the most powerful part of the psyche, which we don't ever access. It's called the unconscious unconscious. It's almost, while the archetype is the subconscious, if you dig around a bit, you'll find answers to the shadow requires a lot more work, because the shadow, as in our childhood, we are faced with images and we repress them. This is where the traumas, this is where the troubled self, this is where the fears, this is where the addictions, all we take them, whatever society rejects in good people, morality, we take that and we park them in a place called the dungeon. And then that self lives there, but it haunts us all the time. It haunts us all the time. And society, the only challenge here is society says that might be bad, so don't expose that to anyone else. You might not be accepted, you might not get a job. I mean, some extreme ends, when people can't repress this, it shows up in addictions, shows up in psychopathism, shows up in sociopathism. Now they are all viscerally shadow going crazy, so they go nuts in that space. So the shadow is the shelf in hiding, and the self which we need, which we repress and which we need to taken out. And there's a beautiful cartoon that I love, which is we have met the enemy and he's us. This is the kind of the philosophical angle to the shadow, that our biggest enemy is sitting within us in our shadow, and it's haunting us and it's troubling us all the time. Everyone carries a shadow. This is Carl Jung talking about. He's the one who actually brought it alive. Plato brought it alive many moons back, actually. Plato is the godfather of sort of unpacking. He named the word psyche, by the way. But Jung took it forward and made a lot of sense of it in a practical way. Everyone carries a shadow, and the less it is embodied in the individual's conscious life, the blacker and the denser it is. If it is repressed and isolated from the consciousness, it will never get corrected, and we will keep finding ourselves in a space of troubled self. So that, and to confront a person is to confront a shadow, is to show him his own light. Anyone who perceives his shadow and his light simultaneously sees himself from both sides of it, and hence gets in the middle, which is called a balanced life. This is the second part. I told you about, so here's a story that we have covered so far. I've told you about the society and the ego fighting, which is called the persona, which is the mask that I wear The word persona comes from the mask. A mask that the sona comes with the sound. The mask that I wear to meet the world, that is called the aspirational self. People put a mask on and say, I'm going to go out there and become so, but it's a good thing to know what is the mask you want to wear. And you have to become that. That's called the persona in some ways. And then the person in us is sitting inside of that iceberg. And the two parts to that are the archetype and the shadow. The archetype is our natural self, and the shadow is our repressed self. Just knowing, just meeting these three. I mean, just to give you a sense of the shadow. Let's talk about the shadow for the timing. There's a place. If I tell you, who do you hate? Who do you hate? When you naturally see someone, you start like, I dislike that person. Let's say there are people that will show up like that. Why is it that there's such a violent response to a particular person? It's because our shadow is working up. Our shadow is responding negative to that. Our repressed self is seeing something outside. And there are many ways to discover your shadows, the regrets that you carry or the traumas that you carry. There's a lot of work. But again, not as a treatment, but as a way of meeting myself. And the more you meet your shadow, the less repressed you would be. The more you meet your archetype, the more naturally you will be. The more you meet your aspirational, the ego self, the more heroic you will be. And between these three, there is a beautiful kind of a musical answer to that question of who am I? I am my becoming self. I am my archetypal self. I am in touch with my shadow self. And these are not psychological acts, they're spiritual acts because each of them drive you towards a place called peace. And that is a journey of all spirituality. All of the Vedic scriptures, they end with these words called Shanti, Shanti, Shanti Hi. All the mantras end with Shanti, Shanti, Shanti Hi. Because the entire goal of the spiritual journey is to take us to a place of inner peace. If you watch Kung Fu Panda, which is an incredibly spiritual movie, and at the end of it, like, oh, this is about inner peace. You open the scroll and you say inner peace. Fundamentally, what I'm talking about is spiritual in a way that in accessing your aspirational self, in accessing your archetypal self, and accessing your shadow self, in a very simple way, you will meet a part of you that's peaceful. And our journey is towards peace all the time. And we want to be peaceful with it, not happy. People confuse it with happiness. Actually, it is shanti. It is not sukha, because sukha has dukkha. Happiness has sadness. It's kind of you buy one, you get one free. It's almost like it's like you cannot not buy one and not take the other. If you buy, this thing, happiness, you will buy sorrow. It's by law. It's axiomatic in that way that you can buy and cannot buy the others, which means you have to transcend happiness. The search for happiness is one of the single biggest source of unhappiness. The search for happiness, because it creates a gap between who you are and who the happy person is, and you'll never reach there. Whereas if you search for peace, it's an easier journey. Yet very few people search for peace. They search for happiness. And and why I'm tabling this, the authentic self, who am I? When you find this, you will be incrementally more peaceful and hence incrementally more spiritual in that sense. Now, until you make your unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you'll call it fate. That's what Jung said. And it's true. The goal is to make our unconscious self-conscious. And the more conscious you are of that, you're like, oh, this is me. People that you find to be very authentic, very light, very easygoing, very happy, equanimous. There are people that are in touch with their unconscious. And otherwise they will, oh, fate is doing this to me. It's not. It's you doing it to yourself. There is no fate. It is you doing it to yourself. The worst I've met, late stage cancer patients who know they're dying. I have met people that have in the extreme ends of their life, suffering a lot, but are absolute peace. And I met people that have all the wealth in the world and are still unhappy, you see. And I don't know, it's easy to know who's more spiritual amongst those two. So it's important for you to know this, that spirituality starts with a dialogue on peace. And that starts by understanding ourselves better. The last one is probably the most interesting one amongst. The first one was the external self. Second one is the internal self. The third one, you may call it the eternal self. Now, this is where the iceberg breaks down. And you may also, if you want to call it, the transcendent self. This is when I'll go back to the iceberg journey. Sorry, I'll just go. This is go to the iceberg journey. And this is when the iceberg melts and you become water. What is there in the iceberg really? What is the iceberg? Isn't it water? What is the wave? The wave says, I am the wave. I am waving. I'm a big wave. You're a small wave. But the ocean looks at you and says, you're just water. And then, no, I'm the wave. Say, no, you're water. Because the wave never, it just forgets it's water. The fish, if you say what's water, it doesn't understand. Similarly, when the iceberg melts, the ego disappears and suddenly you become water. In being the iceberg and in being the wave, if you can remember that you're water, that is a highly spiritual. That's called the transcendent state. Here's an interesting question. I don't know how many of you know of the story of the ship of Theseus. Ship of Theseus is a ship that went out, and every time it came back, some part of it was broken, it got replaced. Some part, again, it went back, came out, and in a few years, all the parts of the ship changed. Everything changed. The question is it still Theseus? Which part of you is unchanging? Which part of you is unchanging? That which your body is getting replaced every day. Every 7 years, you have a new body. Your mind, your thoughts are changing all the time. All the time. Your ideologies are changing all the time. You're a Republican today, you're a Democrat tomorrow, you'll be a Hindu or a Christian. All of those are just ideologies. Which part of you is unchanging? That is the journey towards spirituality. To know the unchanging in the changing world is the journey of spirituality. And that takes us to this place of silence, where I am sitting quietly, observing myself outside of me. They call it meditation. Most people relate to it as, oh, I'm observing my breath and I'm coming down. And fundamentally, meditation is about awareness of thought. It is, are you aware of your own thought? Which means if you are aware of your own thought, you are not your thought. Look at it this way. If I can see my thought, that mathematically, I am not my thought, because I can see it. Someone else. So who's observing the thought is the question to ask. I say, oh, you're thinking like this. Bring your thought back to your nose, tip of your nose. Bring your thoughts back to this, which means who is bringing the thought back? Who's observing the thought? There is always someone observing the thought. Someone or something, or doesn't matter. What is it? Maybe it has no name. But we strongly associate with our monkey mind. Our mind equals thought. So that which observes the mind, observes the thought, is that side and projects the entire world. That mind is actually like me wearing glasses. If you wear blue glasses, which is your conditioned self, you will see the world as blue. So that's not this thing. So that's what happens when you meditate. And that awareness, the observer, the witness of thought is called the third self, called the transcendent self. It transcends the mind. I told you about the ego mind. I told you about the psychological mind. This is the one that transcends thought and psyche and everything. And it's fundamentally universal because egos are individualistic. Each one of us is a bundle of ego. It's like one wave saying, I'm a big wave. Someone says, I'm a small wave. I'm a poor wave. I'm a beggar wave. I'm a king wave. But essentially, we are all water. This transcendent self breaks those boundaries of ego and says, I am who I am. Very few people are able to access. Even a glimpse of this is a shift in perspectives and paradigm. All of spirituality, from mystical Christianity to Sufism to the Vedic religions, to Taoism, to Zen, everybody is moving you towards this one place called, can you observe the mind? Beyond the good and the bad, the happy and the sorrow, the winning and the losing, the me. Can you be aware of your own awareness? Can you sit in that bus stop and see the thoughts pass by and say, oh, that's me going there. That's my thought. That's my thought. Can you be the sky in which the clouds float? That's the idea of the third self. So there are three. We spoke about who am I as is the important question. There are three doors through which you can travel. There are three doors through which you can travel to explore answers to that one question. One is called the achievement self, which is the ego self or the achievement self, which is trying to conquer something. It's called the hero's journey. Find out. Don't say, I don't want to meet the world. You have to meet the world. Even if you're a sportsman, actor, be a great actor. Be a great sportsman. Play that game of life. Don't run away from it. Vivekananda said, it says, don't run up to the mountains to seeking this thing and don't head out to the world. Stay in between. Divinize life wherever you are. What a great, profound statement. The answer is not in running away, but to meet the world, but yet be detached from it. But to know what to achieve is an important question.
Could
Sorry,
you guys just mute yourself? I don't.
So the first one is the achievement self. The second one is find your inner unconscious self and find yourself in harmony with that. Don't jump into spirituality without resolving those, because you will struggle. You will neither be spiritual nor be psychologically free. If you're saying, no, all this is fine, but I'll go and meditate, that meditative mind will not be calm because you're carrying a lot of stuff in your head. That needs to be manifested out. Your unconscious self must find itself in harmony with the conscious self. That requires a lot of work. That is the second self you need to meet. And the third one, of course, as you do all of this, you will find a space when you observe your thought occasionally, sit back. You may call it, that act is called meditation, but the goal is to be meditative all the time. In fact, the most spiritual teachers don't meditate. Actually, they don't. They are meditative. They're constantly in a state of observation, saying, there used to be a teacher who says, oh, that's all happening in the dream. I'm observing myself in the dream. So that witness state of observing yourself makes you still, because there is a little gap between you and the world is your mind. And to be able to step away from that for a little bit is the most beautiful place. And there are many names given to it. The simplest name is stillness. I'm still and I'm quiet. And I'm observing this world pass by. I have lost my job. I've gained a job. I have won a lottery. I've lost something. I have been diagnosed with cancer. All of that is happening on the stage. You are in the green room. That doesn't die, is never born, will never go away. The eternal self. So if we can find ourselves, by the way, all three lead to a place called peace. All of them. At different levels. I find peace in achieving. I find peace in coming to harmony with myself. And I'm at peace. Actually, one of the best quotes about happiness is peace. Happiness is peace in motion. And peace is happiness in a moment. In that stillness moment. So one of the simplest questions to start from is, not say, how do I find heaven or earth or this or that and all of that. Say, what is the definition of peace for me? Open a diary and just start writing. What makes me make me peaceful? And hopefully it will walk you across. These are the three doors. When you walk down each road, you will find peace. I don't know if I answered that question of who am I, but I hope I have triggered a journey of introspection. I hope that you take that road that I am on. I'm on that road still, but it's a joyous road. It's a road of self-discovery. It's a road that no one else. You don't have to hire gurus and teachers and monks. Some of these, the road has to be taken by yourself. There is no mantra that works for everybody. I can tell you that much. There is no mantra. There is no one thing that will be a spiritual answers to everybody's life, because the answers are inwards. And the inward is you. So instead of finding formulas, find journey inwards and explore. That's the best journey you can take. And that's called the spiritual journey. Thank you very much.
All right. Awesome, Dash. That was really nice. I think a session like this is not complete without people not just reflecting about themselves, but asking you questions. So this is an opportunity, guys, because we don't get too many chances to speak to people like Dash. But please feel free to ask questions, whether it's deeply spiritual about your internal self, your external self. And the new one that I learned today is the transcendental self, or the moving self, I guess. Is that what you called it? That was really nice.
The witness self, I usually call the Sakshi, the witness self.
Okay. Does anybody have questions for Dash? Please feel free.
So,
Walker.
Walker, you can just unmute yourselves or on the chat.
okay,
So
great.
go ahead.
So I think one of the things I stopped working a couple years ago, and I found I think I identified myself too much for the previous 40 years with I was what I was doing. You know, building things, talking to angry customers. Naveen knows about that. Whatever it is, you know, versus when that sort of stopped and I wasn't traveling, I wasn't working, I didn't have a team on a mission, and so that was I'm still dealing with that transition. Um, and I guess one question I had would be, I know that it all depends on what part of the journey we're on or whatever, but if there were, you know, three books or three movies or two books in a movie or whatever that you are passionate about, if we could have that as a follow-up, be very interested in that.
There are a few, and they are they're not religious books. They're philosophical books. I will
Yes.
try through Naveen to send. But your question is a very big one, actually, because for a longest time in our life, who am I is our identity is associated with work. By the way,
Yeah.
the second big identity is that of being a parent. Oh, my son left, or through our relationships, and so they come in our way. If your primary identity is that of is associated with work, retirement is going to destroy you. If your primary identity is that of anchored to any relationship, anything that happens to the relationship is going to cause trauma or stress in your life. So these are there, but which is why we need to be clear that that's a role. That's not me. That's a role. It's like me wearing
Right,
a hat and
right.
thinking, I am, you know, I'm acting X, and
Yeah.
and and that's it. I'm acting X. I've stepped away from that, and so that is a great exercise to do. What is your self anchored in? And a lot of them, this is the goal of the factory movement. It's created tags to us called the workers, and so it's a very troubling space to be.
No, it's really good. I really enjoyed it. I think even like my body, boy, I used to be able to jump over tennis nets or ride my bike 50 miles. And now, like, okay, can I get up off the floor without grabbing a piece of furniture? You know what I mean? It's so having that arm's length observation relationship with yourself, is really good. So thank you.
You're welcome. It's a pleasure.
Walker, there was, sorry, Dash, there's a question. When we acknowledge something in our shadow, does it move to the archetype?
No. When we acknowledge something in our shadow, it's an act of healing. It doesn't move into an archetype. You become calmer by saying, you know what? It's normal. So let's say if there was a violent childhood associated with something, and you say, there's violence in me. You will look at it. Every time you get angry, you'll say, oh, that's the angry me in the shadow. It'll dissolve. In quantum physics, it's called the observer-centric reality. When you observe your shadow, it dissipates because this, you know what? You diffuse its power. It's a complicated subject. I'm happy to put some names of books of the shadow itself on it, but it doesn't become the archetype is your natural state. It's like a player playing, it's like Messi in football. That's his archetype. He's a master at it. He doesn't have to learn it. It's almost like plays for the joy of it. That's the archetype. The shadow dissolves. The archetype reinforces and grows.
Okay, we have two raised hands. One is Dhruvo. Dhruvo, want to go ahead?
Thank you. Thank you, Tirthankar. So I just want to understand this eternal self matter a little bit more, the meditative state. So do we, are you saying that we try to observe ourselves from a position of stillness? Is that the goal of meditation? Is that the goal of eternal self? And what exactly do we
So
achieve
the,
by doing so?
right. So it's the mind. We observe our mind. Use the word I observe my mind. That's the way to put it. Not observe ourselves because that will get confusing. In which case you can separate the subject from the object. The object is the mind. The subject is called myself, the witness self observing the mind. The witness self is by natural state still because it has nothing. It's no ups and downs. The mind is the one that plays the games. The witness self is always still because it has no judgment opinion. So the more you access the observer is still. In my stillness, I observe my mind playing. Oh, I'm angry. I am not angry, my mind is angry. I am observing my angry mind. That I, in that little transition. So who's angry? Is you angry? No, you're not angry. It's your, I am happy. You're not happy. Your mind is happy. So that I, before the mind, is the transcendent self, and that doesn't look at joy, sorrow, stuff like that. So the more we can be in that state of I am not happy, my mind is happy, my mind is calm, my mind is anxious, what happens over a period of time is you'll find this 2 inches gap between, so 2 inches gap between your mind, your thoughts, and you, that act. And it's nothing to do with breathing and this and that. These are all techniques used, but fundamentally it is observation. That's the goal. Krishnamurti used to talk about it. Ramana Maharshi used to talk about it. Meister Eckhart would talk about it. Be the observer of mind. That's it. Don't worry about anything else. And don't
So
don't have to sit in a pose and do this. You can be doing this
sure.
anytime. Oh, I'm angry. Oh, observing my. Oh, I'm not angry. I'm observing angry Dhruvo. That's it. That you're
So
meditative.
so observing mind is, in other words, observing our thoughts.
Exactly. Same. They're synonyms. Thoughts and mind are exactly the same. So saying my mind is angry today. You don't say I am angry today. Remove it from a first person to a third person. That's this beginning of meditation. That
And
I
you
am.
start analyzing why it is like
No,
that.
no, no, don't analyze. It's you know why
Just
it would be.
observe.
Just so I'm angry. That's it. You start doing that. Analysis again puts you in the mind analyzes, the observer doesn't. The observer observes. That's the point of saying mind is angry. The mind is anxious. Immediately you'll realize that I am not anxious. That I will start reinforcing the awareness of the mind is never anxious. Is a still, calm, transcendent mind. Is a self, which is why there's no name for it. It's just called awareness. There is an, there is no name God or heaven. It's just called awareness. And that's a beautiful word.
Clear.
Just stay with it. Say, I'm aware. In fact, there's a great book by one of my teachers, Rupert Spira, says, Awareness of Awareness. Are you aware of your own awareness? So if I ask you a question, Dhruva, are you aware? And immediately you'll say, Dash, of what? Because our minds are not used to just saying, I'm aware. If I ask any one of you, saying, are you aware? You say, of what? Instinctively, because our mind has never been trained to just be aware by itself.
Okay.
Cool.
Dash, we have another
Great stuff.
question. Is
Thank you.
self-compassion and kindness towards your is it shown towards your shadow self? That's by Radha Reddy. So Radha, I don't think I asked the question correctly. You can unmute and ask yourself.
So the question is self-compassion kindness towards your shadow self?
You're absolutely right. Absolutely right. Because we hold ourselves too hard sometimes, and that judgment comes from either self inflicted morality or society inflicted morality. Now, what happens is sometimes a part of us, because of whatever conditioning we've got, ruptures and does something which is in contrast to that. And we start to punish it. Actually, it's not to be punished, it's to be nurtured. It's to be said, you know what? So self-compassion is actually, you held it so beautifully well. It is compassionate to my dark side and my shadow self. And over a period of time, it will start dissolving. There is no evil. We give it a name. Even psychopaths, sometimes I ask them, it's a psychopathic. I think, is the psychopath a patient or a criminal? Think about it. Is a psychopath, he or she created himself a psychopath, or conditioning and there's something related? It's actually that. Psychopaths are patients, not criminals. They happen to commit crimes. So there is a psychopath in each one of us, I would say. So being self-compassionate is actually being kinder to your own shadow.
Wow, that was
Thank
deep. That
you.
was deep. Mashmi also had a question. She had her hand raised. Last question.
Dash,
Yeah.
thank you, by the way. That was every time I listen to you, I learn so much. I have a question, but I'm not even sure how to frame it right. Say, if I'm intense on something, I'm refraining from using the word passionate. Say in my case, just driving equity somewhere, right? Is that my which self is it? Is it my external self, internal self, or transcendental? Because I'm wanting to say it's transcendental, but I don't think I can associate that with stillness, because while there is a lot
Yeah.
of joy and peace, there's also anxiety.
Anyone who says, I want to solve a problem in the world is fighting on the first one, which is called the aspirational self, the heroic self. I want to solve and conquer something. Some of it is from someone wants to chase money and win, someone wants to win in sports. You want to solve complex problems in the world. It just so happens that so this is the heroic self, which is the first one, I said, the ego self, which drives wanting to solve and conquer and win over something. Perfectly fine. And so,
I don't associate conquer and win with what,
is there a problem to be solved in the world
or maybe a
with that journey?
service to be done,
Sorry?
a service to be rendered.
That's a problem to be solved, which is sustainability is a problem in the world. I have to serve that, right? Service is also part of that. Service as a climate activist is a part of that journey. None of this, which means you are fighting a battle to win, which is a good thing. It's not associated with in achieving some of those milestones. You will find yourself at a sense of peace and achievement. I've achieved something in my life in doing that. It gives meaning to you, but it is part of that self that is trying to conquer something, good, bad, ugly, fighting some version of evil that you carry in yourself. Not everybody wakes up to fight what you're fighting, which means it's the heroic self that you have chosen to. It just happens to be a good thing.
Okay, guys, I'm going to bring this to a close. It's exactly on the dot 9:30, and if I could indulge you to stay on for 2 more minutes, I just want to get something closed out. Firstly, if you found this session interesting and you'd like any of your friends to attend, at 6 p.m. Singapore time, there is another session of this coming up. So please, inform your friends and family. In terms of a call to action, if you could get on the chat and say, would you sign up for a retreat? Just say Q1, yes or no. That would be good on spirituality. So Q1, just yes or no. And the second question is, would you want it to be, Singapore in the Himalayas or somewhere in Colorado or somewhere in the US? Just say Q2, Singapore, Himalayas, or wherever else. That would be great. And then we will use that information to try and figure out what to do next. This is not a commercial operation where we say, okay, you sign up right now and we'll get you a discount or anything. This is just a conversation to have with you to say what's going on. The last minute, I will talk about a phenomenon that's happening in the world that we are all part of, okay? That is the aging planet. There is a analysis being done that by 2100, more than 26% of the people will be, above the age of 65. There is a statistical crossover point that's happened in the 28 to 2020, where the number of people over 65 is more than the number of people below 5. Okay. So essentially what's happening is a graying tsunami is happening around the world. Marketing organizations, thinking organizations, traveling organizations have not fully realized this, but we are all part of that graying tsunami. And 25 years more is trying to do its bit to help this gray tsunami that's coming through the world. These are our contacts. 25 years more, you can visit us, register. I'd love for all of you to register. Dash is a coach on our platform as well. We've got a Life 2.0 scoring app where you can assess where you stand. And a new app is going to be launched very soon because a lot of the conversation on WhatsApp are getting muddled. And I think having a separate channel for conversations would be fantastic. So thank you all for participating. Thank you all for being there. Dash, just an amazing speaker. I wonder how you're going to do this one more time. And you did it just now, straight from your flight. So appreciate you being there for us, Dash. Thanks, everybody.
Privilege. Thank you. Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye.